I'll call this regional special council meeting to order. Please be advised that today's meeting is being recorded and published on a publicly accessible website, and please respect social distancing in council chambers. Council additions. Any council additions today? CAO additions.
Yes, Mayor. I want to introduce our new intern.
Very well. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Souls, seconded by Councillor Andrews. All those in favor? Carried. Business arising, coronavirus, COVID-19, CAO update.
Thank you, Mayor. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. So updates for this week. Town Hall opened yesterday for regular hours, so that went reasonably well, and staff did a good job prepping Town Hall to accommodate the public. We'll have our meeting next week, next Tuesday on the 9th at noon, and then possibly we might, we'll discuss at that time at council and to confirm we'll probably transition then into our regular meeting schedule, which would be the following, probably June 22nd for a regular meeting. And I'll follow up with councils individually to discuss your preference for attendance if council would like, if councilors like to participate in person or continue virtually. The 2020 UBCM conference was announced is going virtual this year, and there was an order handed down from the province in regards to that. I passed the information on the council yesterday. Additionally, the NCLGA AGM is virtual this year, and looks like it will be called to order on June 15th and adjourning on July 3rd for opportunities for voting purposes and things for resolutions. We did receive information which was obviously passed on last week to council and on today's agenda from the BC Recs and Parks Association regarding guidance around opening spaces, outside spaces, playgrounds, facilities, things of that nature. So we'll chat about that here, of course, on the agenda today. And we also received information from MIA, the Municipal Insurance Association, regarding outlining steps and providing guidance regarding mitigating risk and liability for municipality as we navigate through the pandemic. And we are in the process of working towards opening outdoor spaces. Some signage has been ordered, and working through those processes, and we'll discuss that a little bit more detail here once we walk through that admin report with Aaron. And additionally, lastly, campgrounds are in the process of transitioning the two campgrounds, Andy Bailey and Tetsa, into allowing drop-ins also, while still continuing, of course, to take reservations and communicating that the campgrounds are available for BC residents only to be in line with what BC Parks is also doing. Anyone have any questions?
No questions, councillors. Moving on. Additions, delegations. Fort Nelson District Chamber of Commerce. Bev Vanderstein, Executive Director, recent BC Chamber of Commerce policies. Ms. Vanderstein.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Council. That's okay. I'll forgive you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for allowing me to come as a petition today. Every year we bring some of the policies that we've been working on through the BC Chamber back to Regional Council, and I had wanted to do that this year as well. So the actual policy book of the accepted or adopted policies won't be out until closer to the end of the month, but I thought there was a few that warranted being highlighted to your attention now. And so I think you all got the package. If I'm not mistaken, I can screen share if you need me to, or I'm assuming I can, Jaylene. But if you have it all there, then there probably isn't any need.
It is on our agenda package, so we should have a copy of it.
Okay, perfect. So the first one that I just want to talk really briefly about is connectivity. So this was brought up during a rural Northern Chamber meeting that we hold weekly, along with a number of invited guests, MPs, MLAs, and Mayor Foster has been joining us as well. and we thought that the time was right for this. So I put this together to take to the BC Chamber on behalf of all the Northern Chambers. And it's top of mind really right now with a lot of politicians across the province and across the country. So I think there's an opportunity to be had. Essentially, we're calling for connectivity to be considered, broadband and connectivity to be considered an essential utility. And we're looking at, we know that as we come out of COVID, that there's probably going to be some opportunities around infrastructure projects and things to start getting economies moving again. And if there do become opportunities around broadband and cellular service or connectivity, that we be ready with some shovel-ready projects so that as soon as that funding comes available, we have a project we can apply and we can get people to work doing it. We all know this is an issue across the north and across northern Canada. So that's essentially that one. The second policy that you see there is one on timber supply, and the policy was actually brought forward by Parksville, Qualicum Beach Chamber of Commerce. The first two recommendations, we had the policy amended to add the three recommendations, 3, 4, and 5. And essentially, this is, some of them I think are easy wins. What we're really looking for the government to do is, and we have been for years, but is to look at those non-tenure holders. And I think, particularly around things like small scale salvage, we have some potential for that to be a quick and fast win and be able to get some of our secondary producers working. And as we move out of the COVID situation, government is looking for ways to help boost that economy. So I think this is, again, an opportune time to try and push some of these mandates forward, and maybe we can be a little more successful than we have been in the past. The third policy I include in there is a softwood lumber policy, which came out of the Kelowna area, and I really just included that for your information, knowing that forestry, of course, is a big topic for us up here. I don't know what the recent court ruling means to the policy. It was adopted just before that happened, so but it's there for information. And then the last two that I really wanted to highlight, and again, I think we are a bit timely here, is a medevac equitable care policy and an accessibility policy. So you'll see there's two accessibility policies. The first one I wrote, the second one came out of Surrey. Those two will be amalgamated. And we know that the province has a goal to have BC be inclusive in all of their buildings by 2024, to be an inclusive province. So we wanted to make sure that there was a policy going forward that ask government to make sure that they're consulting with stakeholders, and particularly with including businesses as well as we move into that process, and calling for the government to maybe look at some kinds of grants and things to help businesses moving forward to make their business more accessible without putting all the burden of that cost on the business. And then the medevac and equitable care, if I jump back to that one, of course, this is something that all of us, and I know UBCM and NCLGA are quoted extensively in that policy. It's I think, timely. Again, COVID has really demonstrated to some of our political leaders the need for that medevac service, and for being able, the rural areas of the province being able to access equitable care, and realizing some of the challenges around medical services in the province. So I think right now we have an opportunity to have maybe more politicians open to more conversations, because the situation we've been in has really demonstrated some of the vulnerabilities that perhaps, regardless of all of the stories and examples we've been able to give them, haven't hit home in the same way, but suddenly ears are perking up when I'm talking about these issues. So we really wanted to make sure that they were highlighted. And you can see in there that the recommendations to government are fairly simple, in that we're just looking for ensuring timely access to care, providing for a return to community, I think certainly from a BC Chamber perspective, many weren't aware that doesn't happen, that people are just kind of thrown at their home out on the street, wherever they are. And then improving the financial assistance for out of community services, particularly maternity, you'll see in there. So just wanted to bring those to council's attention and staff. And if, there's any way I can help as you bring issues forward, or if, feel free to bring these forward, use the BC Chamber's name in any of the things you're doing if you think that it will add some extra push for you. So that's it for me, unless we have some questions.
Are there any questions, councillors?
That's a very good report.
Councillor Roper.
Thanks for that presentation, Bev. Has the BC Chamber looked into the new Starlink internet system that's being launched right now? They are supposedly going to be providing service to northern U.S. and Canada by the end of this year. Has there been any discussions or information about that?
There hasn't been that has come to my attention, but I can say that we will have a discussion. Now, of course, the policy is about putting it forward to government, not choosing ourselves what we're going to do. That's up to communities and government and policymakers, but it's certainly interesting.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, Mrs. Vandersteen, thank you very much for your presentation, and all those things are vital to the Northern Rockies, so I appreciate you bringing it forward to the Chamber of Commerce. On the fact that most of those municipalities, or most of those chamber members didn't realize that people are not returned to their communities, I think this is another example where we have to reach out to other groups to show them what the issues are in northern and rural communities. So I appreciate you doing that. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Moving on, reports, bylaws, admin report number 40, business talks. Miss Vandersteen.
Hello, Mayor and Council and the staff on the call. So this is just an information report brought forward from our economy working group that includes a number of staff members as well as the Chamber of Commerce as a partner. And one of the first projects that was put forward was to reach out to our businesses just to give them a call and say, we care, how are you doing, even if it only went that far. And then as a second part, to understand a little bit more about what businesses are going through in our municipality, what struggles, challenges, opportunities, and then hopefully for us to be able to understand where we can help, or at very least be aware of the real situation. So we took a bit of a different stab to the Business Walks program, which was completed in 2016, where volunteers walked around 2 businesses, specifically in the downtown core at that time, and did a little bit of a survey face-to-face. Obviously, face-to-face isn't a possibility right this moment, but we did have a variety of staff and volunteers in the chamber survey over the phone. So we were able to complete 216 business surveys out of approximately just over 500 businesses we were able to find through our business licensing statistics and data. So I just wanted to give a bit of an update on how that went. The survey was broken into 2 parts. So the first part being the qualitative part, very conversational, open-ended questions, just to hear businesses and have that person-to-person touch point. The second part, so not everybody did both the first and second part, but the second part went on to more quantitative data. So data-driven questions, which is where we are able to see in the report the graphs and graphs and tables and that sort of thing. Lots of information in the what we heard report, and we wanted to make sure that we brought that back out to the community, and the businesses that took the time to participate were also interested in hearing a little bit of what we overall heard. And then it did take a little bit longer than we thought to compile this. Some conversations took 15-20 minutes. Some took an hour plus, depending on who was phoning and who was answering and what was going on in their lives and in the business. So the date range is about a month. So some of these businesses, there is a bit of a flex between businesses that would have been surveyed first thing versus ones that were surveyed at the very end last week. But I think the data overall is still very helpful in moving forward. And overall, businesses were quite appreciative of the phone call. So I won't go in and review the whole data package or the report. I'll leave that open to questions, although I will identify kind of two main things. So when we asked what the current state of their business was, there was 4 kind of categories that popped up. The complete drastic reduction in business, so many of those were completely closed. Moderate effects, somewhat business to usual or close to it. And then there are a handful of businesses that are actually busier than they would typically be or were expecting to be at this time without COVID-19. And then the other thing that came up in a lot of different questions was just the fact that the pre-COVID-19 depressed economy is a huge impact, and in so many different ways, from almost a positive, allowing businesses to be semi-prepared for this because they've been preparing for these low economic times for years now, to concern and unknowns of even if COVID-19 comes through, but what does that still mean if we're still in a recessed economy generally? So that kind of overlies on top of everything from all the different perspectives and questions that came up as a general consideration. And then so I'll stop talking and I will open it up to questions if there are any, and then go from there.
Councillor Roper.
Thank you for that presentation. Have you heard from any businesses that are anticipating that this situation is going to lead to a permanent closure or a drastic change in their industry that might affect them for well beyond this COVID situation?
Yeah, so there are definitely businesses that at the time of surveying, they identified that they didn't know how long they could continue. So that's that question where it states 1 month, 3 months, that sort of thing. Anybody that indicated in there in the short term, they are not sure of how they'll continue, depending on how restrictions are opened and all that. So there's a lot of unknowns. But from a tourism specific perspective, because I have more education or knowledge on that side of things, that is likely to be a couple years in the making for the long-term effects and recovery period.
Thank you. Any other questions, councillors? Thank you, Ms. Vandersteen, for this report, and I think this gives council a very good idea of where businesses are sitting in the Northern Rockies here. And I would echo that some of the businesses that are involved in tourism are going to be extremely hard hit, and other businesses seem to be doing as well as they were in previous years. So the recovery part of this is a little on the uneven side. But thank you very much for this report.
Yeah, so our working group will continue to look at this data and all of the anecdotal information as well that wasn't included in the overall report, and work towards whatever we can based off of this information.
Thank you. Admin report number 41, business parking lot use during COVID-19. Ms. Vandersteen, do you want to speak to this as well?
Yes, I can. So this also came out through just the variety of education and meetings and information that's being pumped out on an economic development perspective, and then went through our economy working group for analysis. And it seems like a relatively easy way for us to show support for businesses. I know the Chamber of Commerce has had conversations with a lot of businesses and restaurants about whether or not this would be helpful. So Bev would be able to answer more specific to her conversations. But in the way of just supporting businesses, I think that it is a positive step, and whether or not a business takes advantage of it, I don't know. Time will tell, but it may open up some doors or provide businesses with the idea, if they maybe haven't even had the chance to think of it themselves, with everything that's going on and all of the research and planning and plan creations that they're currently working on.
Thank you. Are there any questions, councillors? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to accept the recommendation. Councillor Souls. Moved by Councillor Souls that businesses be supported to use the off-street parking. I have a seconder, please. Seconded by Councillor Andrews. All those in favor? That motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Admin report number 42, resuming recreational services. Mr. Barry, did you want to speak to that, or Mr.
I can start, and then I'll pass it off to Aaron. So we've received a great deal of information over the past week regarding some guidelines from the province. As I mentioned earlier, the BC Recs and Parks Association document was endorsed by the province, and then additionally WorkSafe BC. Great deal of information there, and what we're working towards now, obviously, is based on council's resolution at the last meeting to look at getting the outdoor spaces open. Obviously, depending on the space, there's different requirements to open those. In some cases, a great deal of input to get the output, and in other cases, a lesser requirement. So the intent today is to start those discussions with council. Obviously, in the background, we are working on the various areas, outdoor spaces, parks, playgrounds, et cetera, the rec facility itself. But just wanted to start the conversations with council. Aaron put sent out the document early or late last week for council to review. We've gotten some responses back, and it's just to get that discussion, just to ensure that there's from a guidance perspective, and what the province has provided the document as for guidance, to see if council has any other thoughts in terms of process or priorities and things of that nature, and answer any questions you might have. So pass it off to Aaron to walk through the report.
Mrs. Laval.
As CAO Barry mentioned, the BC Recreation and Parks Association, that guideline came out late last week. One thing to note is that as you work through the guideline, BC RPA has sort of tied their timings quite closely with the BC's restart plan. So, which is why we attached both the restart plan and the guideline in case there were any questions in terms of the timing. And how BC RPA looked at it was they looked at Dr. Bonnie Henry's phases through the restart plan as to what types of activities would be encouraged and permitted to restart during those phases. And BC RPA kind of blended in what recreation would look like during those phases. So in addition, BC RPA also looked at one of the key factors as you read through the guideline is that they were very adamant that not all local governments will look the same. So what is good for one community may not work in another community, and that regional council needs to determine what's going to work best for our community based on the community spread of COVID in our community. Is there community transmissions actively occurring? What are the needs of the community? What are the neighboring communities doing? So in terms of timing, do you want to match what a neighboring community is doing, or do we want to be independent and specifically meet the needs of our community? And along with what level of risk and liability is council wanting to assume in the opening of different things. So just going through, if you skip through, and I do apologize for the lengthy attachments, if you skip down to of the admin report of your agenda, it's page 62. It has the large BCRPA table, which they color coded for green, yellow, and red, depending upon the level of risk that that activity. So they measured that level of risk based on things such as high-touch surfaces, the use of common equipment. So that's why something might seem kind of odd. So basketball, the activity of basketball, they rate that as high risk, because it's one piece of equipment that every player touches in a sweaty environment. So they kind of rated that one as a higher, where something like a sports field, a baseball, they rated that one much lower because it's not as much common shared equipment, less close contact. So as you work through that table, that kind of sort of defines why things were a low or a medium or a high risk. So what we did to sort of help council through discussions is we created our own table. I took the exact same activities that were included in the BCRPA table, put them into a large table, and this is starting on page 108 of your admin report. And working from left to right, we talked about what's its current status in the NRM. The next column we called interdependence. So is that activity interdependent upon another activity occurring first? Then we included what the BCRPA has for a risk rating for that particular activity. Just some high-level notes on what kind of mitigation to reduce the transmission of COVID-19 is required as per the BCRPA. And that is mainly for public to public risk. This is not, that column is not taking into account a lot of the worker to public risk, which falls under Worksafe Guidelines. Then the relevant BC restart phase, where it sort of falls into the BC restart plan, what the effort will be to open that particular activity. We rated things that were low, that would be just as simple as removing caution tape and applying some signage, to things that would be high, which would be involving the development of new updated safe work procedures, retraining of staff, the development of a safety plan for employees, and different things like that. And then just some specific NRM considerations that may come into play based on that particular activity. So for instance, washrooms at Art Fraser Park, if we were to open them, in terms of cleaning, we would need to ensure that we have staffing for the adequate service level of cleaning that council determined. And we would need to have a safety plan in place for those employees to help mitigate the risk of the transmission of COVID from a public to a worker. So I received 4 responses back to just a bit of that ranking exercise. I'm not sure if council had any questions on the report, or did they want to go and sort of talk about the different activities?
Yeah, Councilor Roper.
Yeah, I would really like to see this list of services go out to the community, possibly in a survey form, and then we can get some more information from the community as to their perspective and what they would like us to do.
Any other comments, councillors? Spoke to Mr. Barry earlier today. the public health orders, the only orders that are required by law are the social distancing orders that would affect this. The rest is, I think, is entirely up to us. We're looking at maybe opening some things that are low impact, that we can get as many of these facilities open as soon as possible. And I believe the swimming pool is in phase 4, which is the furthest away from us, I think for various reasons, because of social distancing and the effort it's going to take on the part of our staff to get that open. I'd encourage the other 3 councillors to fill out this questionnaire as soon as possible too, to get it back to our administration. Are there any other comments or questions? Councillor Gerwig.
Out of the 4 council people that submitted answers to the questions, was there any consensus? Like, did we agree, or were we way far apart?
Councillor Gerwig, in general, there was mostly agreement. So in terms of priorities, definitely focus on the outdoor spaces first. All of those that responded were focused absolutely on the outdoor spaces, on those things that could be achieved with the least amount of I don't want to say effort, but difficulty. So it involves signage, it involves some education, it involves removing some caution tape, and it is a transfer of that assumption of liability to the public. So that was definitely the largest consensus. In terms of the indoor space, there was general consensus that most those that responded would like to see the rec facility open, like the doors open, and a phased approach. So ranking quite high was the summer day camp programming, where things like, if I scroll down, events was definitely much lower on the list for people. The pool ranked somewhere in the middle, and programming was somewhere middle to high. Adults was a little bit lower of a priority. Children was a higher priority than adults or seniors.
Okay, I just have a question about the pool. When I look at the information that was sent out in this report, the risk for pool is medium. Dr. Henry reported yesterday, or was it yesterday or the day before, verbally, that the risk to pass it on is low. So I understand that the work involved in getting the pool back up and running is high, but I think that it's, you know, if it can be done safely, which I think it can be done safely, then I think it would be a huge benefit to our community, keeping in mind that we could only have 50 people in there, but I think that that wouldn't be hard to do. So
sorry, Councillor Gerwig, go ahead.
So then the other part of that is that we're not waiting for the other 4 council people to respond as we begin to move, or what are our next steps in seeing this happen?
Mr. Barry?
So it's a bit of a, it's a multi-function approach. So we're in the background working currently at working towards opening various spaces. So of course, the outdoor spaces based on council's resolution last week are obviously a focus, while in the meantime, we're at the same time working on the rec facility opening also and what that looks like. In regards to the respondents from council, the hope is that we receive the remainder of the responses prior to next meeting. So then we can show council what all those responses are in regards to the rankings. We'll have a scoring process or outline how many, what that is based on the consensus of council. So that would be the intent for next week, but in the meantime, it doesn't mean we've stopped. The reason why we want to have the discussions, and to your comment, Councillor Göring, regarding the pool is the pool there's 2 components to open that pool. One is what's come down from the BCRPA, and additionally, it's the Worksafe requirements and also the safety. Help me, Aaron.
Yeah.
Life Saving
The
Society.
Life Saving Society. So what wasn't attached to your document is a secondary document that's been published by the Life Saving Society, which is our governing body for our aquatic operations. And it incorporates the biggest hurdle to opening the pool, which is the Worksafe Guidelines. So Worksafe Guidelines has stated that a worker, cannot be closer than 6 feet to a member of the public. So we have to, so can you now picture an aquatic environment?
Well, especially if they need rescuing. Like,
Exactly.
is anybody thinking with any common sense or what?
There is, so that's where the greatest amount of work is involved. It's not with the public health guidelines in the pool, it's with WorkSafe. So, and not that these are not unachievable. We just, it is going to require a lot of work to figure out how to achieve them. And they've stated that if an employee needs to get closer than 6 feet, not just to the public, but to another employee, we also have to provide PPE to that employee. So it's challenging when you think about the aquatic environment and lifeguards exchanging places where they're guarding, speaking to members of the public. Life Saving Society has actually recommended that change rooms do not open, that people come to the pool in bathing suits and are not allowed access to change rooms or lockers, and then they leave in those bathing suits. So we're trying to figure out how to get people through the pool in that fashion, and how are we going to make that work?
So maybe if we just wait, this will all change again, because schools are open. Like, they can't maintain 6 feet between everybody all of the time. So maybe some of this is going to be changing.
And that's one of the reasons for having these discussions with council and having the ability to understand some of those challenges. We could spend a significant amount of resources and capacity focusing on the pool if council said, let's focus on the pool, while other amenities aren't being worked on because we're focusing so much effort on the pool, and it's an ever-changing environment. An example is, up until this morning, we weren't sure how to open the washrooms in Art Fraser Park with the other items, because with the other outdoor spaces, potentially because we were receiving direction that minimally they'd have to be cleaned twice a day. We just received information today outlining that it looks like it's sufficient to do it once a day, as long as appropriate signage put up, et cetera, et cetera. And of course, that we also go then and look and discuss this with our insurers to ensure that we're adequately covering our looking after our liabilities. So, I mean, so we are working on the pool piece in the background. We are working on the rec center, but we don't have all the capacity working at it. We're looking at the other areas that require minimal input, i.e. a ball diamond could open fairly easily with the appropriate signage up for pickup games. League play is a different story. League play, the league is responsible to provide a safety plan themselves. Any of those third-party leagues, if it's softball league, or it's, I mean, when hockey season opens, if the ice is going, for example, minor hockey is required to do those things too. So there's so many moving parts in regards to that. So that's why we wanted to have a discussion with council, so they understood some of those challenges and the fact that there's only so much capacity to go around, and we appreciate council does understand that. And we have the ability to prioritize, versus if council said today that they wanted to focus 100% of their efforts on the pool, then we start shifting our capacity that way, understanding that A, there could be changes to the information we receive, and B, as organizations, as local governments, we are sharing information. So we are robbing, duplicating each other's documents and things too, as required, when it fits to assist in that. So there's, that's the reason why we're having these discussions. Right? It's all great conversation.
Councillor Penny, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, reiterate much similar to what Mr. Berry is saying. It'd be great for us to get the things open that are less difficult right now. And I mean, we know that all the outdoor spaces are really what everybody's looking for right now. And as time goes on, I'm sure the restrictions will lessen and make it easier on staff to open up the things like the rec center and that sort of thing. But that's about it.
Thank you. Any other comments from councillors? Councillor Andrews.
Sorry, trying to find the unmute button. I'm one of the councillors who didn't respond. I'll put that out there. I was looking through it. I was having issues with Excel. All my fault. I didn't do it. But looking over it again, like outdoor spaces, stuff like that, I'm not into trying to open things indoors at the moment. Anything outdoor we can do, limit, like the direction that is consensually we've been talking about, I'm totally in on it.
Any other comments? Councillor Souls?
Yeah, I also support the idea of carrying on with what we're doing. There's no point in changing our focus right now. We know that you're focusing on the outdoor things to start with, and you're not neglecting the others, so everything will come together in time, and we'll watch the regulations and policies change. So yes.
Thank you, Councillor Souls. Any further questions? Any questions from staff?
Mayor, I just wanted to add, one of the things that the rec staff is also working on is how to bring back some of those outdoor activities within a safe manner. So I had a conversation with Mrs. Pearson just before the council meeting, and she's working with the organizers of the Summit Run It to determine how we could have a small event that would meet within the public health guidelines that could still promote that outdoor activity, promote that particular event while still meeting all of those things. So all of that, all of those activities are still happening in terms of trying to plan different things in different ways to keep the community engaged in somewhat of the normal activities that they're used to. So I just wanted to make council aware that we haven't forgotten about all of those things, and we are still continuing with figuring out ways to do things in a slightly different manner and safer. So things like Canada Day, what can happen, or some of these events that we do.
Okay, thank you. If there's nothing else, we will move on to capital merge project update. Ms. Luann Watson.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
This is just a quick update for your information to let you know that we recognize that there's an additional strain on the economy as a result of COVID, as well as recognize that we may have a potential delay in cash flow for the NRM itself this year. So we've taken a closer look at our capital projects because they can both stimulate the economy and alleviate a burden on our cash flow. So we reviewed them to identify those that can be maybe deferred to next year if there's a need. And those projects that can be deferred would not put at risk on our infrastructure, so they wouldn't be in an imminent failure. And those that do not employ local resources would take a lower priority for completion this year. Projects with high risks, such as a critical sewer defect, those would continue regardless. Priority has been placed on those projects that can be performed locally in order to provide some cash flow to the community. And in addition, those projects were reviewed to provide as many different opportunities as possible in an effort to spread the benefits throughout. So this will provide additional opportunities and increases the ability for the work to impact several local contractors as opposed to one or two. I just wanted to make sure that you're aware of what we're doing to prioritize our capital projects, and if you have any questions.
Thank you. Are there any capital projects now that have been taken off the list, or are we just simply looking at them now, waiting to determine the cash flow?
At this time, we're just waiting to determine the cash flow.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Watson? Very well. Information package for May 27th, received for information. New business items, Mr. Barry, an introduction.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to introduce Gabrielle Jacob. She's our new intern from the NDI intern program. sponsored NDI. So I'd ask Gabrielle to probably come up. It's a camera. It's kind of a different way of doing intros. Keep going, keep going, keep going. There you go. You can
a little more, Gabriel. Yeah.
I'm working alongside Jaylene, and I got acquainted with our team yesterday, and yeah, really looking forward to the work we're doing here in the municipality. So thanks so much for having me, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome.
So Gabrielle, she started yesterday with us, and was the same similar interim program that we Val when Val was with us here, and then similarly, of course, that was Ross. Ross was an intern way back in the day too, of course.
Very well. Moving on, new business item, replacement of the Northern Rocky Free Municipality representative to the Fort Nelson Library Board. Councillor Gerwing is being appointed to the Library Board from the Phoenix Theatre, and Councillor Andrews is being appointed from the Library Board to the Phoenix Theatre, citing conflict of interest as his wife has taken a new position with the library.
So Mayor, these appointments are by resolution, so council will have to, resolution as you spoke of it, replacing one for the other and vice versa, and require a resolution to council.
Very well, I'll make that resolution. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Souls. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. I'll now ask for a motion to resolution to move to a closed meeting.
I'll make that motion.
Moved by Councillor Penny, seconded by Councillor Souls. All those in favor? And we are in a closed meeting.
Roper, do you have something or, okay. Are we good? Okay, we're recording.
All right, and we are out of the in-camera meeting and back into the special regional council meeting. And I'll ask for a motion to amend the agenda. Councillor Gerwing. Seconded by Councillor Andrews. All those in favor? The agenda is amended with some additions by Councillor Gerwing. Go ahead, Councillor Gerwing.
Thanks everybody for your patience. I just wanted to briefly talk about the Parker Lake Road, the grad banners, and July 1st, possible some sort of celebration.
Very well. Do you want to start off with the Parker Lake Road?
Okay, so I was out at Parker Lake last week, and I know that the Parker Lake Road is not the responsibility of the NRRM, but it's in atrocious shape. When I was out there, there was like almost 20 people out there kayaking, fishing, whatever, having a good time. I'm just wondering if council would entertain any notion to utilize any of our public works person power and equipment to send a grader down to just unrut that road.
Mr. Barry, what would be the implications of us working on a road that we don't own?
We get permission first. So that we get permission to do something there for sure. And my Councillor Growing indicated, I think that was yesterday. I think the days blend together, but so I indicated the concerns on the road. So I'd asked Harvey to connect with the province, because first, if they can do something, we would get them to do something first. So I haven't had a chance to follow up. And if council wish to, if in the absence of the province be able to do something with that road, if council wish, they could pass a resolution for us to do something, and either A, put a limit to what a cost would be, or B, have us bring some information back in terms of what that would look like. I haven't had a chance to take a look. I don't think there's much gravel on that road. I think it's pretty soupy. And I don't think the drainage is that great. And if there's not much gravel on it, there could be some challenges grading muck, I guess. So I'm not quite sure what the cost would be.
The cost?
If it just meant running a grader over it, you're probably 2 to 4 hours of manpower and the grader. I'm not convinced about going to take a look that 2 to 4 hours of a grader would be sufficient to deal with that road. road based on the condition of the road. But I did have a chat with Harvey yesterday, and he's in the connect with the province. And I chatted with him and also Public Works to take a look at it to see what would need to be done, minimally what would need to be done to improve the condition of the road. And I haven't had a chance to follow up yet.
Could we put a number on this now? I mean, if we're going to ask council for a resolution, we should have a number. Councillor Penny.
I've discussed this road several times with our contractor that takes care of our local roads, and I think it'd be much better if we actually got a cost estimate from them prior to us trying to spitball in it, because I don't think that we'll really be able to even get any realm in this room right now. I think if we just asked the question and got a price back, and then maybe we could make a decision.
Okay. That'd be a resolution then, Councillor Penny, to get a cost estimate of the road improvements and have staff follow with trying to get the province, I take it, owns the road, to see if we can get them to do it.
Yeah, it's the Parks and Recs department. It's the department that looks after the rec sites. So Beaver Lake is an example, or any of the trails, Steven Rock, Parker Lake fall within that organization. Typically, their budgeting is fairly limited, so the likelihood of having them have the budget to go in and do anything significant with that road is probably not really likely. But
so failing that, then we would look for a cost estimate to the municipality.
Yeah, we can get a cost estimate. Yeah, for sure.
Would that be fair for a Councillor Growing?
So if we're going to ask the contractor to do a quote, can we do it in two different phases? Like a quote to improve the road to whatever extent, but also like a minimal thing that, that is just going to get us through the season or through the next little while so that we can actually use the road.
Councillor Penny.
I noted that road has been graded before. Because there was no permission asked, I don't know who did it, but apparently there's been so much rain this year and so much rain in the forecast that it just has been pointless, I think, to do anything at this point, unless, we see some dry periods coming ahead or we get some gravel on that road.
Well, I know last year that somebody very nicely graded it, and it did, even with all the rain last year, it did last for a while. It got us through the season that we could still utilize the road, right? So, I mean, I totally understand it would be great if we got a road in there that that it was of a higher quality, and I'm all for getting a quote to getting that done, and then we can look at that, especially seeing as how it can be local. But at the bare minimum, if we could just also get a quote on just taking care of the road so that it's passable for the next little while.
Yeah, I think, is that good enough for a motion then?
Yep.
Very well. Moved by Councillor Penny, seconded by Councillor Dolan. All those in favor? Carried.
And sorry, and just to confirm, part of that resolution is easy. It's fine for sure. But part of the resolution is also to get the province to take a look if they can go and. Okay, just want to confirm. Perfect.
Okay, Councillor Gorman, your second point.
Oh, right.
Grad?
Grad banners. What's the ETA on the grad banners?
So the material was ordered last week, and Colin thought it would be about 7 days before he'd receive it. So the goal is to have them ready to hang by mid-June. So we didn't realize that he hadn't already ordered the material. So he was waiting on that. And as far as I know, he's got the design all complete. They have all the pictures they need. It's just kind of pre-production at this point. So, and then as long as it takes them to actually produce them. So, and I think we'll be ready to hang them when they're done. So, yeah.
Councillor Penny?
Yeah, I really should have mentioned this prior, but the Rotary Club of Fort Nelson has stepped forward to cover the cost of the printing of these banners.
Yay! That's awesome.
Excellent, thank you. Councillor Gerwin, your third point.
And I'm sorry that Krista isn't on the line right now, but July 1st, are we looking at some sort of a celebration, or Where are we on that?
So we're obviously limited to mass gatherings of 50 people or less. So the challenge of having any kind of normal, for lack of a better word, celebration is a challenge. But we are looking, and myself and Aaron chatted briefly yesterday, but we are, which includes, of course, Krista Pearson, looking at what type of opportunities are there to celebrate Canada Day within the public health guidelines. So most likely it'll be a lot of virtual stuff that could potentially happen. What that looks like, not quite sure. And also because you just can't have the crowds come out, of course, right?
Okay, thank you.
One of the opportunities that was being discussed was a drive-by parade. So instead of having the parade gatherers lined up on the sidewalk and the parade moving through, you park the parade and have people circulate around the parade. So it kind of meets the whole social distancing or physical distancing, and then, but also a similar effect as what a parade would provide. So that might be something that is an idea.
Councillor Roper, you had some comments?
Ms. McIver just touched base on it. I was going to make a suggestion, some sort of drive-in or drive-by something, but that's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay. Is there anything else? Excuse me. Is there anything else, Councillor Gerwing? I'll ask for a motion then to adjourn.
Make the motion.
Moved by Councillor Penny, seconded by Councillor Gerwing. All those in favor? And we are adjourned.
Take care, everybody.